Standing as proud intermediaries between heaven and earth, trees have always excited human imagination. The mythologies of various peoples speak of the existence of a huge tree upon which the order of the entire universe depends, and in early Irish tradition God is at times described as the great architect of the firmament who built the house of the world upon 4 massive tree posts. This idea survives in spoken Irish still when we praise someone to Crann an Ispera or to the trees of the sky. The worship of trees in sacred groves and clearings was particularly common among Indo-European peoples, and there is evidence that in ancient Europe Germanic, Nordic, Finnish-Ugrian, Lithuanian, Slavic, Greek and Roman peoples all worshipped in forest sanctuaries. Reference to Celtic sacred groves can be found in the writings of Roman historians, and Lucan, writing in the year 60 AD, relates in hyperbolic style how Caesar's troops in southern Gaul stumbled upon a Celtic sacred grove near Massilia, now Marseille. His description reads thus: "A grove there was, never profaned since time remote, enclosing with its intertwining branches the dingy air and chilly shadows, banishing sunlight far above. In this grove there are altars furnished with hideous offerings, and every tree is sanctified with human blood. The birds fear to sit upon those branches, the beasts fear to lie in those thickets. On those woods no wind has borne down, nor thunderbolts shot from black clouds. Though the trees present their leaves to no breeze, they have a trembling of their own. Water pours from black springs, and the grim and artless images of gods stand as shapeless, fallen tree trunks." In more recent Irish tradition, frequent mention is made of famous old trees which were dotted around the country and which are landmarks for public assembly. The Irish word for these trees, which were treated with reverence and protected from damage, is bille, and there are many places around Ireland which make reference to the bille. Acha an Ville, the field of the tree, takes the English form Ahaville in counties Cavan, Leitrim and Monaghan, Ahaville in County Cork, and Ahavilli in Armagh and Down. Alt an Ville, or the steep slope of the tree, is rendered Altaville in Laois and Limerick. We find Balla an Ville, the farmstead of the tree, in counties Mayo, Roscommon and Tipperary, and Knock an Ville, the hill of the tree, gives Knockaville in counties Galway, Mayo, Tipperary and Wexford. This brief listing, which names but a small few of the sites in Ireland which reference the bille, shows the widespread distribution throughout the island of Ireland of a cult of the sacred tree, which was very much a countrywide phenomenon. Sacred trees were often associated with inauguration sites, ecclesiastical sites, particular saints, and indeed holy wells, though some of these great trees appear to have been sacred in their own right. There were, in Irish tradition, the 5 great legendary trees of Ireland: Billa Turton at Ardbrackan in County Meath, next to which St Patrick built his church; the Ó Moona near Ballymoon in County Kildare, which yielded, we are told, 900 sackfuls of acorns, apples and hazelnuts; the Yew of Ross in Old Loughlin, County Carlow, referred to as the noblest of trees, glory of Leinster; Daithí's branch at Firbil in County Westmeath, and the branch of Ishnach, also in Westmeath. Sites upon which sacred trees grew would seem to have been taken over by monastic communities in Ireland, and Geraldus Cambrensis, writing in the 12th century, noted how yews with their bitter sap are more frequently to be found in this country than in any other I have visited, but you will see them principally in old cemeteries and sacred places, where they were planted in ancient times by the hands of holy men, to give them what ornament and beauty they could. The scholar A.T. Lucas has noted, however, that it was the church that came to the tree and not the other way round. Writing in 1963, he related how pagan sacred groves and trees were Christianized by attaching them to the Christian ritual while yielding to the traditional pagan devotion to them. An example of this may be seen in the great yews at Muckross Abbey in Killarney, which would seem not to have been planted in the monastery, but to have preceded the monastery, which was later built around them. Aside from its connection as a ceremonial or religious site, the bille was often used as an inauguration site in ancient Ireland, with the king of each tribe or population group being inaugurated beneath the branches of these trees, a practice which seems to have survived up until the 16th century. A particular insult recorded in the early literature was to cut down and burn the inauguration tree or bille of one's enemies. In 1099, the Crea Tullacha in County Antrim was desecrated by the O'Neills, an act which was avenged in the year 1111 when their own bille was uprooted. Aside from kings, many trees and woods were associated with saints. In considering this point, it might be worth travelling to West Wicklow for a moment to the village of Hollywood. Hollywood appears in 1205 AD as Sanctum Boscus, or Holy Wood, a name given to the area on account of its association with St. Kevin, the monk and founder of the monastic site of Glendalough. Legend has it that the saint was being carried through the area by his devotees one day when they met with a dense wood obstructing their path. Kevin began to pray fervently, upon which the trees of the wood bent to the ground, forging a miraculous trail for the saint and his entourage. He then pronounced a blessing on the place, promising hell and short life to anyone who should burn either green wood or dry from this wood until doom. Similarly, in the life of St. Columcille, we learn that the saint so loved the wood at Derry that he was loath to cut down a single tree in it. And we are told that he charged his successors to chop no tree that fell of itself in that wood, or that was blown down by the wind, till the end of 9 days, and then to divide it among all the folk of the place, good and bad, a third part of it to be put in the guest house for the guests, and a 10th part of it as a share for the poor. Many trees in tradition are further associated with holy wells, of which there are thought to be some 3,000 dotted around Ireland, many of which are still visited as sites of devotion and pilgrimage today. There often grow beside holy wells trees which partake in the sanctity of the well, and on which votive offerings are left as a physical emblem or symbol of the hopes and prayers of those who visit. One account concerning such a tree in Kilcrehan in County Kerry relates how eastwards from Derrylan is the old ruined church of Kilcrehan on the mountainside and commanding an exquisite view. Near it is an extremely curious stone cell with a well dedicated to St. Crehan, over which grows a gigantic ash tree, said to be the largest in Ireland. This tree is hung with innumerable coloured rags placed by the pilgrims who visit the well. A large Pattern Day was held at this holy well, and although the tree fell in 1945, it had been visited many years afterwards, the rotting trunk of the billet still laying untouched on the ground, and pilgrim offerings of pennies stuck in a split in it, which showed that its sanctity persisted even in its decay. To cut or interfere with sacred trees was to invite misfortune and disaster, and many accounts relate the bad luck that befell those who tried to chop down, burn, or otherwise desecrate them. This following account, collected by Michael J. Murphy, relates the story of a man who cut 7 whitethorn trees in a fairy fort just beside his house, an act which resulted in the death of 7 calves.
John Lynch out there cut a forest just beside his own house in Corrinewa, and I heard him, like this is true, he told it himself. He cut a forest and cut all the trees down, knocked them all down. And there was seven lonely bushes in it. And every year he lost 7 calves, and he didn't know what to do. And somebody told him to transplant, to get young whitethorns and put them in the place where he cut the other ones out of. And he did it, and he never lost any more calves. Now that's Corrinewa.
That's beside you here,
just over there.
Corrinewa.
Other trees, however, were viewed in tradition as being unlucky. The elder tree, for example, was said to be the tree from which Judas hanged himself, and so was left well alone by the people, not being burned, as Mick Walsh here describes to Jim Delaney.
The elder tree?
Yeah, the old elder.
Yeah.
But there was a bad year.
What did you say, Mick? What did you say about it?
About which?
The elder tree.
ELDER, isn't that here?
What about it?
He was...
I didn't...
Judas hung himself over.
Let's see.
But there was...
Why is it so common then around the gardens, around the house?
Oh, sure it would grow nearly on the road if it fell.
Yeah.
I think it would nearly grow up through cement. And you can't burn it. No one had burned it.
Is that so?
They say it's not lucky and cattle had died and everything. But anyway, whoever has seen it, they have it about Judas hanging himself. And as a tree is not liked, although there's nice elderberries on it, could make nice berry. But
you're not supposed to burn it?
No.
Being bad luck.
I told her cattle had died or something. But anyway, it's no good to burn, which is only like old dirt in a way.
Yeah.
But there was a bad year worse than this. But not one in Birch's Bog. I'll be the holly.
Not all were so wary, however, and Mick here relates the story of one Ned Halligan, who had a choice response for those who tried to dissuade him from cutting the elder to use for fuel.
There was a grey old character by the name of Ned Halligan, and he was the night watchman in Roscrea Bacon Factory. But Ned was a well-up old deeple, but could talk to anyone, and must have got a good school, but was terribly intelligent. But Ned went on towards Birch's Bog. But he took a saw, one-man saw with him, and a bill hoe. He said he'd get millions of a fire over some of them. But sure, he went on to the turf and sure was only a heap of muck, but came back, but there was great big elder trees growing alongside the bog road and on the old ditch. Lots of them, the finest. We got Ned picked out one. Well, he got hard with the saw, he began sawing. Well, then there was others came on, and they said, to look for it, so I would get a lock of turf too, and they said, "What are you doing, Ned? Don't you see what I'm doing? I'm sawing down this tree." "And why are you sawing for? To cut it up and take it home and burn it." "But they say it's not right to burn an elder tree." "Why?" says Ned. "They said it was over an elder that chewed his home himself." "Well, big ups," says Ned, "he didn't hang himself over this one, and he sawed away. He didn't, it wasn't this one, and sawed it down, took home a great big load of elder to Bunker's Hill, and carried it in and burnt. Well,
That was a good answer he gave them.
and big ups, and Ned'd have no place for anything like that.
Many trees in Irish tradition are associated with the fairy host, the otherworld community who live alongside us in the natural landscape. Those trees standing alone in the middle of a field, or those trees which appear not to have been planted by human hands, were often treated with a certain amount of trepidation and reverence, a tradition which persists into modern times, with roads and building sites recently having been diverted around such trees.
Did you ever hear much about the fairies around your place? Was there any traditions about them?
Yes, there was about the forts, that should never cut a bush in a fort. And an old cousin of mine, an old bachelor, they had a fort on their farm.
Yeah.
In a place called Lisbryan. You could understand there were plenty of lisses around there. And this fort, he insisted on cutting down some bushes out of it. And his sister alleged that it was a curse. A thorn got in his eye and he lost the sight of the eye.
While rooted in the earth, trees ascend towards the firmament of the heavens. They likewise renew themselves through the eternal rhythms that govern all living things, those cycles of growth, maturation, decay, and rebirth, as they blossom, flower, give fruit, and eventually shed their leaves before being reborn anew each spring. Certain of these proud intermediaries between heaven and earth were treated with great veneration by our forebears, and echoes of the worship of sacred trees survives in folk tradition to this day. In this final piece, Lisanne Fitzpatrick relates a story regarding a large tree on her father's land. This tree, which her father refused to cut on account of its association with the fairies, stood in the field despite the ridicule of neighbours who suggested he fell it, a symbol of the special veneration given to trees, a body of tradition which, while stretching back into antiquity, is still with us to this day.
See, we have, Tom in our house, my father had a great big tree, and it's an awful big tree. And it's an apple tree. And of course it interfered with my father. Of course I suppose they have it took out of the field where it is now, because the corn field it was in. My father always ploughed and everything around, and people used to say, "You're a foolish old man, what do you think you are? Why don't you truck the tree down and have all that space?" "No," says my father, "that tree is there in our old generation, and that's a real old tree," he said, "and that's a fairy tree," he says, "and I would not touch it." My father wouldn't touch the tree. No, he wouldn't let you go near an apple on it.
Really?
The poor old
It was an apple
Oh,
tree?
I wouldn't let an apple off it for anything. Oh, no, my father wouldn't let anyone touch an apple off it.
Now, it's
They'd
any other
packed out
trees?
with apples to be, and still we wouldn't touch them. The cows, we let them into the field. They would eat the apples
Yeah.
off it, but we wouldn't touch them, no. Touch nothing belonging to a fairy, you're not supposed to.
And were there any other trees like hawthorn?
No, there was only this one big tree in the middle of the field, and it was a corn field. He used to sow it, till it and all, and everyone was at him. Why did he not cut down that tree and not have that tree there? And my father said, "No, as long as my generation is alive, you know, I shouldn't meddle with them. They don't meddle with you, and you shouldn't meddle with them." Oh, there's any amount of fairies in the country. We used to go at night to hear them. Yeah.
Really? How do you hear?
To hear them. You hear them in the field singing. They sing to themselves, you see, in the field. We used to go to, our place was all a big
kind of singing?
big crossroads, and we used to all go out and stand over the wall, and they said, listen, we'd say, "Listen, do you hear them?" And they sang to themselves there for all that we were. And people often seen them coming home at night from dances and all, across the road and all. Now, at about 12 o'clock now at night, that's where you'd see them crossing the road. Crossing
Where
from
are they
one
during
field
daytime?
into another.
Where do they go during the daytime?
They stay in the rat.
Yeah.
They have rats. Yeah, there was a tree, and the rat is in the tree then, they can stay there. I believe they're lovely little women. So I believe they're lovely little ones.
And are they all women?
They're all women. Little fairy women. So that's why the little child went off the play. She thought they were children like herself. They were fairies. All of that. There was any other fairies in the country. That's why we looked outside the door and they were afraid of the fairies. Because we'd hear them singing. We go out in our own crossroad and the lads would be going out for coaching in their house. They call it Cayley in here, we call it coaching in the country. And it'd be about 12 o'clock in the otherworld. They'd say, come out here. Come out here, Miss Anne and Johnny. Come out here to hear this one, Anne. Anne, would you hear? Lovely. Yeah, Johnny,